Hi, I'm Emma, and today I'm going to show you how to set up your project for Eeks 183. You might be like, I already know how to set up a project. We've done this 3 times already, but we actually have some additional steps we need to think about because we're dealing with file input and output. And I'll show you how to do it, so don't worry. The first step that we're going to do is we're going to create a new Xcode project. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, so we're going to go to Xcode, create new project. Under Mac OS, we're going to go to command line tool, and then we're going to click next. I'm going to name my project P4, short and sweet. You can name it whatever you want. Our organization identifier is going to be our unique name, and our language is going to be C++. Make sure that it's not Swift. I've seen it too many times to count. Okay, now we're going to go to next, and we're going to navigate to where we want to put our project. I like to put my projects in my Eeks 183 folder in my documents, but yours might be somewhere else. So I'm going to go to documents. I'm going to go to my Eeks 183 folder, projects, and Xcode will actually create a project folder for us. So we can just go to where we want the folder to be and create the project right there. So I'm going to just my projects folder, and a P4 will be created for us when we create this project. So I'm going to leave create git repository on my Mac unchecked, this right here, unchecked. If we leave it checked, no big deal. We'll get a pop-up that we can just exit out of, and that's totally chill. I'm going to go to create the project. Beautiful, beautiful. Our project was created. It made a main for us, but you might notice there's no files that we want inside of our project. So in order to do that, we're going to move to step 2, which is going to be downloading our starter files and adding them to the project. So we're going to go ahead and hop away from Xcode for a sec and download our starter files. So under starter files on the project spec, we're going to click on this using this link. Click on our starter file zip, which is just a compressed file. And now I'm going to show you a little trick. And that trick is going to be how to select a lot of files at the same time. So you can go ahead and click on that first file, hold down the shift key, and while you're holding down the shift key, also hold down your down arrow key and just hold it down until you select all the files. And there should be 33 files that you have selected. So make sure that your numbers are aligning with mine if you're following along. And I'm just going to drag those files. I stopped holding down my keys and now I just am dragging my files into my projects folder. So I'm going to go back to documents. You can go to your Eeks 183 folder, wherever it is. Some people are big fans of desktop. I'm not as big of a fan. I'm going to go under projects, and we'll see that we're super excited because a project folder was created for us by Xcode when we created our project, which is awesome. And another hint that I like to share is that we want to go as deep as we can go. So we see the P4 folder, and we see another P4 folder, and we're going to keep going as deep as we can go into the folders until we see that main CPP. So I'm going to, once I see that main CPP, we're as deep as we can go inside of 2 embedded P4 folders. I'm just going to go ahead and release, and all those files will be moved for us into our P4 folder. Okay, so now that our files are downloaded and they're in the right place, we can go ahead and add them to our project. So my Xcode project is open because we just created it. If not, you can just go ahead and open it back up. And I'm just going to drag these folders, these files that are already selected into my project. So I'm just going to put them exactly inside of the scope where we see main. So I'm going to go ahead and release. We're going to leave copy items if needed unchecked. We're going to leave create folder references checked, and we're going to go ahead and click finished. Beautiful. At this point, do a check for yourself. Make sure that you didn't drag in a folder, you just dragged in the files. If you drag in a folder, you're going to have a whole bunch of compilation issues. So you want it to look like this, where we have the project, then we have the folder, and inside of the folder, we're going to have all of the files necessary to be successful in our project, which is just all the starter files. Another check for yourself is to make sure that each of these files match each of the files here, and make sure that the files that you dragged into your project are in the right place. We want to make sure that the path to our project is the same as the path to where we downloaded our starter files and moved them to. So do those few checks for yourself, ask yourself those questions before moving on to the next step. So the next step is just going to be that I'm going to delete main because we don't need it anymore. We have a main. If we leave main, we're going to have a big problem. Okay, so I'm just going to right click on main, go to delete, and I'm going to move to trash. Do not do remove reference. It's very tempting to click the big blue button, but don't do it. Move to trash. Okay, so now we have all the files that we want, no more, no less, and they're all in the right place. You might be like, okay, Emma, I'm ready to code. All my files are in the right place. My main is deleted, ready to go. That's actually not correct. We have one more step or two more steps before we can actually start coding. So what's special about this project, like I mentioned before, is that we're dealing with external file input and output. And when we deal with external file input and output, we need to tell our computer where to look for those files and where to create those files. So in order to do that, we have to set up a custom working directory. And in order to get to the custom working directory, I'll show you how to get there. So now we're going to go to product, scheme, edit scheme, and then we're going to go to run, options, and then we're going to scroll down until we see our golden ticket over here, which is working directory. Right now it's unchecked by default because it just uses the computer default directory, but we're going to want to specify where our files are. So I'm going to click on use custom working directory, which is just the toggle right here. And this is not enough. It's not enough to just click use custom working directory because we haven't told our computer where to look. We basically so far have said, hey computer, I'm going to tell you somewhere special to look to read and write files to and from, but I haven't told you yet. So now we're going to tell the computer by clicking on this little gray file icon right here. And so we're just going to make sure that we're selecting where we're reading and writing our files. So I'm going to go to documents. I'm going to go to my X183 folder. I'm going to go to projects, P4, and we're going to go to where our starter files were. So I'm going to go as deep as I can go and until I find my starter files. So here they are, it looks beautiful. I'm seeing my text files, which are going to be some input files. Looks good. I'm going to click choose. At this point, do a little check for yourself and make sure that you selected the correct working directory. I remember that when I put in my files, I went as deep as I could go into my P4 folder. And it looks like here, I went as deep as I could go inside of my P4 folder, inside of my X183 folder, which is good. So all you have to do, you don't have to save or anything, it'll save automatically. You can just go ahead and click close. At this point, if you have Xcode 15, where you can see if you can look at about Xcode and you can see that you have Xcode 15 or higher, then you're good to go. You're done. You don't have to do anything else. But if you have Xcode, an earlier version of Xcode, then you're going to have to do an additional step, which is outlined in the spec. So you can see if you go to setting up file IO in the spec, you're just going to have to go to Xcode, which is right up here, Xcode. There will be an extra little button that says preferences. So you're just going to go to Xcode, preferences, locations, select relative, and then make sure that says derived data. And all of this will be outlined in the spec for you. I'm assuming most students will have Xcode 15 or higher, so you won't have to worry about that. But if you have any problems setting up that, then feel free to come to office hours. It's just one extra step. Xcode, preferences, locations, relative, derived. And then we'll see at this point, we're done with all of our setup steps. You might try to click compile and you'll see that actually the build has failed. And it looks like a scary error, but it actually makes a lot of sense. We'll see it says linker command failed with exit code 1. Basically, the reason that is because all of our stubs haven't been implemented. So once you implement all of your function stubs, or you write out the bare bones for all of our function definitions, then your code should compile and you'll be ready to go. So just make sure you do step 2 in the spec, which is writing function stubs, and then your code should compile. Feel free to come to office hours if you need any more help setting up or post on Piazza. Good luck.